Welcome to Lower the Shield. I wasn't expecting to go live today. I think I've done this a couple times where something unexpected has come across my desk, and I've decided to bring it forward out into the community. So early this morning, I woke up and presented with one of the news stories that I had on an event that happened in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the United States. The actual event happened right toward the end of August, but it's hitting the news now. It's in the current news stream because of the challenge that it gives us on our sense of decency as human beings. And that in itself was harsh enough when I saw it. I absorbed it, I settled it, and moved on about my day. But then one of the YouTube reactors, Jamel, aka Jamal, just within the last hour and a half, 2 hours, posted a video on it. He titled it "Sad News." And Jamel is one of the reactors that I first became aware of in the reaction realm on YouTube. I follow his channel. I find his reactions authentic. He's all about being a kind human, being the best human that we can. And he was part of the inspiration for me to set up this channel. There are other aspects that influence this, but the idea of being kind and being a good human to each other is slapped around every once in a while by the news story such as this. And this particular event in Las Vegas, apparently impacted Jamel deeply. And then I was moved by that. And I'm struck as I watch many YouTube reactors reacting to videos like with Ren or Ren and Chinchilla, Aurora, and many other performances on how much emotional reaction gets brought up in the reactors and the authenticity that comes with it. That's what we're all about. So when a news story like this unfolds and it knocks us back on our heels, it really gets us to maybe lose our sense of hope and a sense that there is good in the world, we don't really know what to do with it. So as we're encountering this, there are things that we can do with it, with intention, with awareness as reactors, and then also as the communities watching the reactors. And some of those things are taking care of ourselves, checking in with our own ability to be compassionate toward ourselves, much less compassionate back outward into the world, into the community. Because it can certainly seem like we're losing hope, that the world's going to hell in a handbasket, that everything's crumbling down. And that can be hard. So it does take work sometimes to remind ourselves that it's not all like that. So this just kind of summarize what this news story is there was a retired police chief riding his bicycle on the streets of Las Vegas. Two young teenagers were out joyriding, and they videotaped or videoed themselves. The passenger apparently was holding the camera, intentionally running over the bicyclist and killing him. It's taken a couple of weeks to bring the investigation to fruition, so that now it's in the news cycle, and they're showing this video out in public. I'm not going to link it. I'm not going to show it here. I don't think there's a need to look at something like that, other than to set in with, okay, well, what happens when something like that happens? What do we start to feel? What do we experience? It can challenge us on so many layers. It can bring up this deep disturbance within us of anger and disgust and frustration and all sorts of intense reactions, or we might find out that we're numb to it. I was like, it's just another story. this afternoon, watching Jamel's reaction, he was deeply moved by it. He's deeply bothered by it, as well as being a good human, we would be. And that's prompted me to come in and this, to really support each other here and recognize that there is good in the world still. But then to go deeper, our first reactions of anger, and not to disregard those, but to turn toward our anger as we feel it, notice it, be with it, and listen to what it's telling us so that we can then make meaning of it. Those are deeper practices, and this is what Lower the Shield can be all about, is as we lower the shields and we get to feel all this, it might be overwhelming. So we put the shields up, we wall up, we defend ourselves, we make it so that we don't have to feel this kind of emotion around hard things. But then it just keeps chipping away at us. It just keeps chipping away at our shields. And sometimes our shields collapse and we don't know what to do with it. Some of the terms, not to get too psychobabbly here, I have a tendency to do that, would be something along the lines of moral outrage. We hear the story, or we see it, seeing it, now we're bringing it in through some of the other senses. It activates this moral outrage within us. And it can be a deep wound. It might activate other instances throughout each of our lives, or each of your individual lives, where you have notice your own moral outrage, or a moral injury, a moral wounding. That's where it can be hard for us in the moment, but we can give it time, ground ourselves, and then as we ground ourselves, settle ourselves. So I will put a link down into the description of, there is a video on my channel here about grounding, and I invite you to watch that. It's less than 10 minutes long, gives 3 different ways of possibly to ground yourself around emotions, emotional grounding, so you can find some stability, some solidness under you while you encounter hard stories like this. Or as I continue to move forward, many of you are asking that I start to do an analysis and review of some very specific videos, Aurora, Ren, Chinchilla, and maybe some others that might be emotionally activating. So grounding practices can be useful for all of us while we engage in this journey together. But specifically today around this one, around this story. Because when emotional outrage shows up, the challenge that comes with that is we can have not emotional outrage, moral outrage shows up. It can create a distress within the body. It might be stronger than anger. It could be a full body reaction, and it calls us in to do something, but so oftentimes there's nothing we can do. In a case like this, it's already been done. The murder's already occurred. The 2 young men are already in custody, entering the criminal justice system, and now we all, as outliers, onlookers, observers, get to trust that our criminal justice systems do what it is that we hope that they can do. But sometimes that's not enough, because it has wounded us deeply at a moral level. That's where the moral injury comes in. A definition of a moral injury that I find useful is when a psychic wound forms from witnessing or participating in a morally transgressive act. And we might ask ourselves, well, what participation did maybe any of us have in this incident? Our psyches know, our subconsciouses, our unconsciouses know whether our past, present behaviors may have contributed to some deeper aspect of something that's going on. What's going on in an environmental setting that allows 2 teens to even come up with the idea, hey, this looks like this would be a good idea to get in a car and run somebody over on purpose, and then laugh about it, because that's also an aspect of the story. What's going on there? Certainly you got the 2 individuals, but well, what about their upbringing, their path up to that moment in time? what other aspects within society is contributing to that? What role do each of us have in maybe trying to prevent that or to encourage it? Certainly social media platforms, many stories come out and about where within the social media, people have been encouraged to harm themselves, to kill themselves, to stop existing. And that's not okay. That's certainly, I won't even say from my perspective, that's not okay. And I get the sense that most of the community here kind of are here also saying mental wellness is more important than some of this other types of behaviors that are showing up. So the moral injury and the moral wound that shows up can be overwhelming. And so grounding practices, settling in, catching our breath, and then being with it, and then moving from grounding into centering. And I do have a practice on the channel already around equanimity and acceptance. It's a deep practice. It's more of holding whatever's here, no matter how difficult it is, and then making meaning, crafting new meaning. And sometimes it takes time. We got to let the anger settle in. We got to engage with the anger, not acting out on it in a way that's not healthy, not useful for us, listening to it, find out what it's telling us as individuals, create our own meaning, and then say, okay, is there anything I can do with this? And oftentimes there's not. Oftentimes there is. It could be something like writing a letter to a legislator, might be something like getting involved in some community projects, or simply it could be just feeling it, doing a compassion practice, settling in with it. All of this takes a moral sort of a courage. Whatever our individual psyches take us to engage us with something can activate or can require emotional courage or moral courage to do that. Courage, in essence, is strength of heart. So we come forward and we say, no, this is okay, this is not okay. And it's so not okay that I will write a letter, so not okay that I will go hold a sign and protest, so not okay that I will have a talk with my kids or my grandkids or my neighbors or my friends. It's unique for each of us, but it's important to notice how it shows up and know that there are names for it. Emotional, or I keep saying emotional, moral outrage, moral distress. They land in the body, and they can be overwhelming, and they can take us down this path of feeling hopeless, that there is no hope for humanity even. And pulling it back in and saying, it's not a commentary of all of humanity, but it sure seems like that sometimes, because it's not just this story. It might be another story. It might be something to do with some mass attack, mass shooting, mass engagement with humanity, of harming other humans. It happens around the globe, but it hasn't stopped. And every once in a while it comes to our awareness. The media, the way it is now, allows us to learn of events like this rather quickly, whereas 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, you might not ever hear of them. And even now, we don't always hear of everything that's going on around the world. We probably can't absorb it all, of all the harsh things, but then there's also all the good stuff that's happening also, all the compassionate deeds and kindnesses that are going on toward humanity. So in fear of going off on a rambling tangent, I don't want to do that. I wasn't setting the intention to do that. I just want to let you know that reactors out there, if any other reactors are ever going to watch this, we can do it together. We can do it to where we can absorb, feel the emotions authentically of what it is that we're viewing, then feeding back out into our communities. And we can stay grounded, but it's also okay for us once in a while to feel like, what's the use of it? And checking in with that. Is what does happen with time is we may move into a space where we can recognize that this Las Vegas case, for instance, that there's more people hurt by the incident than the bicyclist. You certainly have his family. They now no longer have him in their world. His friends, his colleagues, his former co-workers, the people that have never met him yet that would have been in line to meet him and sense his humanness that won't get a chance to. But also the shattered lives of the young men's families from where they come, if they exist. Their friends, their teachers, their people in their communities. Their lives also. Their lives are now destined, if they already weren't, destined into probably lives in prison. And wherever that takes them, that's one of the things is we don't know. They can rehabilitate. Juveniles, well, people in general, but juveniles especially, have the ability of rehabilitating as they enter the criminal justice systems and learning values and mores and a sense of rightness and wrongness and acts of kindness. We don't know yet. We can't predict that kind of stuff, but it's easy. It's so easy for us to have thoughts like that, that maybe these guys are worthless and just throw them away. We don't know. So part of that then is, what do we do with all that? And one of the most healing aspects on any kind of a injury where one human does something to another human is this process of forgiveness. When it's appropriate. You can't do it too soon, and you can't misplace it. You can't just toss it around and say, I will forgive an act of somebody if it's going to continue. But that process can be useful and appropriately placed. So very often, placing forgiveness appropriately can be hard. It can be confusing. It might be even unknowable initially, but it does take time. And when it does come in, the whole psyche, our whole being starts to settle down and release the harsh emotions and transform them into something else. It doesn't condone behaviors, but it gives us a sense of relief and healing, our own healing. So that particular idea of forgiving somebody when it's appropriate for something that has happened can be useful. In fact, it's absolutely a necessity for us navigating a civilized society. When we're starting to feel hopeless, our ability to forgive starts to go away also. So being able to recognize it, tap into it, and then we don't have to do it alone. The one message that I continue to press on the channel here is that we don't have to do any of this alone. We're not alone in any of it. If we're hurting on something, more than likely there's somebody else hurting. There's 8 billion people on the planet. Not going to do the math here, but if you do the math, if only 1% of the people on the planet are feeling the same way I am or the same way you are, that's a lot of people. So we're not alone. We can recognize that we're not alone. We can simply imagine the others that are feeling similarly, or we can actually reach out and find people that feel similarly and heal together, be alongside together. So I am going to stop here. I just want to speak out directly to Jamel, aka Jamal, that thank you for everything that you have done so far, and I'm confident that you will be able to move through this. But that story is difficult to listen to and even more difficult to watch. What pains me is seeing a kind soul such as yourself being impacted so deeply. And that's what happens is any of us that do care, we get wounded deeply in the face of stories like this. So to embrace the wound, bring it in, soothe it ourselves, and know that we are doing this together. So anyway, may we all be well and move forward with courage and strength of heart, all for the good of others. Take care.